Motivation in Motion. Own your moment and get better today.
Okay, I'm Rex Blankenship.
Okay. And now I know that you haven't coached, and we've already had that discussion. Right. So tell me a little bit of what you've actually been involved with over the last several decades.
Well, let me start with my coaching connections. Okay. I was raised in a coach's family, same as Bill, my brother. Our dad was a Hall of Fame coach at Spiro, and I grew up in the huddles as a little boy, was on the sidelines and then played for him. And coaching's in our family. Bill has been a head coach at many places. My son is a head coach, basketball coach at college, and in Louisiana. And I have uncles and cousins all in the coaching profession. So growing up in all that, that was all part of my life. And as I got into college, began to speak to FCA groups and was used there to interact with coaches and players, and became.
And went to Harvard, right?
Yeah, I went to Harvard.
Okay, I remembered a little of these interesting nuggets.
Well, it's not that big a deal, but the story. But coming out of high school, I was a passer and as a quarterback. Wanted to go to TU because that's who was leading the nation in passing with Jerry Rome and Howard Twilley and all those guys, and they didn't offer me a scholarship. I had a scholarship offered to OU and to Houston, and ended up OU signed Jack Mildren, name of the past, and so I was going to go to Houston, and then got admitted to Harvard. Had not ever desired to go there. My parents are educators as well as a coach, and I talked to Coach Yeoman down in Houston, and he said, we'd love to have you, but if you were my son, I'd recommend you go to Harvard. And he said, if you break a leg, come on back, or if it doesn't work out, come on back. And so that's how I ended up at Harvard. Came out of Harvard, worked for U.S. Senator in Washington and in Oklahoma, and went to law school at the University of Tulsa, and the Lord called me into the ministry. And became a youth minister and then later a pastor for 30 years. And during that time, as I mentioned, I spoke to FCA groups quite often. I coached youth basketball teams to state championships and still used that as much as I could. But the main part of looking back on my life was that God always used me to connect with young men. And whether it was through FCA or the youth ministry, and to try to help them to follow Christ, to find their way in life, and just be a mentor to them. And so as I pastored, that was God just sent young men, groups of young men that I was able to have some small part of influence in their life on their walk with the Lord. And then as the church I pastored in Shreveport began to age, there were not quite as many young men coming in, and I kept praying to God, this is how you used me. I want to continue having the platform of influence to these guys. And then Bill got hired at the University of Tulsa and invited me to come up and be a part of the staff here, and then from that to Owasso. And so it allowed me to continue to have be around coaching and then to influence young men and trying to help them in their walk in the Lord.
Wow. What's it been like being around brother?
Well, he's the best coach there is. I mean, not just on the field, but off the field, what he does with his coaches, what he does with his players, how he uses his platform of influence, the character that he has. And so I'm a big fan.
That's great. Now, I know when we asked you to do this, you were like, well, but why would I do it? But it was for that, right? So your ministry. So let's talk about some of those stories. Do you have a story of a coach that you know that just kind of pops to your mind that you got a chance to really kind of see transformation and Christ at work?
Well, it was my dad. And, growing up as a young boy, guys would knock on the door of our house, and there'd be an African-American young man, and he's standing there with a young teenage son, and he said, I want to introduce you to the man who changed my life, and this is why you have something in this life. Wow. And you'll never go through the tough times I did, and it's because of this man. and then to be sitting at dinner tables and there's a phone call and somebody wants to talk to the coach and tell him that, hey, I just got saved. I just became a follower of Christ, and you're the first person I wanted to tell. That kind of seeing that influence in people's lives greatly impacted me as a young man.
Yeah.
And there was a story where my dad had to pull the senior letter jacket from his team captain because his captain had broken the rules, and it broke my dad's heart. And the guy went on to be kind of the town drunk for many, many years. And one Sunday we got a phone call, and he said, Coach, I found Jesus, and he's changed my life, and you're the first person I wanted to tell. And the next phone call my dad made was to the school to order a letter jacket for that guy.
Wow.
Those are the kind of impacts that I saw, and how people can make such an influence in people's lives.
If you were to give me a little bit of an insight into what some of that ministry look like when you work with these coaches, like what do you do?
Okay. Well, I'm allowed to have a Bible study with them, weekly Bible study. Of course, I'm at every practice, and so with them as with the players, I do what Jesus tells us to do: watch and pray. And so I'm just there. I'm not allowed to call plays or actually be a part of the coaching part of it. But seeing what's going on in their lives as well as the players, watching as much for attitude as for actions, to look for those little openings of a teaching moment to touch not only a player's life but a coach's life, to be able to follow up with a text of, hey, I'm praying for you, and to know, hey, this is a tough time, and to be able to allow shape some kind of spiritual foundation to these guys, speaking of coaches, who are making such an impact on so many lives every year. And nobody else really makes that significant of an impact on young lives year after year after year. And so to try to help them in their own marriage, in their own walk, in their own wisdom of learning how to not just coach X's and O's, but how to reach guys' hearts, because they're going to use their platform of influence one way or the other.
Absolutely.
And so to try to help them to point these guys to the thing that's the most important thing in their life. And so I say to the coaches, as I say to the players, always remember the most important thing in life. Jesus told us what it was. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your teammate, your brother, your neighbor as yourself. And so, we teach motions to that, that players and coaches can teach others to love the Lord your God with all of your heart, all of your soul, all your mind, all your strength, and love your teammate as yourself. And just to remember the most important thing. And so coaches are like players, and they're like we are, how God coaches us. It's always about remember. Remember your focus. Remember your purpose. Remember that you have a pattern. What did Jesus, the Bible say? That we are to be imitators of God and walk in love just as Christ loved us. And so how did he love us? He loved us first, and he loved us most. And so that's how you love players as a coach. You got to love them first. You got to love them most. What I do as, I don't even know what my title is, performance director or whatever.
I was going to ask you.
Well, they have something. I'm kind of a slash chaplain in the old days, FCA chaplain in the old days. But, every day a fist bump or a high five or something, hugs lots of times. But every player, I love you. Every player, I love you. And to begin to see that culture within a team going, I love you too, coach, or to beat me to it and say, I love you, and begin to try to say, hey, this is how you interact with your own teammates. It's okay to say I love you. And because you're going to be a dad and a husband someday, and you need to be able to tell them, I love you. And that's what I learned from my dad more than anything, is that he loved me no matter what.
Now, why aren't more schools doing this? Why aren't more schools finding people like Rex and placing them alongside these huge campuses and influence? Why aren't we doing more of that?
Well, I'm not sure.
Okay.
But I would say I'm here because Bill thought it was important. He knows it's important. and our athletic director in the school allowed that to happen. Not every place can do that. But I would say, because there will be coaches and retired coaches hearing this, that you as a retired coach can find a spot like I have in some school. It doesn't have to be an official program. Go and put yourself out there. Go watch and pray. You don't have to coach and do X's and O's, but you were created to be a coach. So don't give up. Get back out there. Find some coach that you can mentor. Find some young people that you can high five or hug. Watch for them and their attitude, their needs. Every kid, from the richest to the poorest, has emotional needs, and they have difficulties, and they have things that you look for those teachable moments of where they need someone to put an arm around them and say, hey, I care, and I'm praying for you, I love you, to send them a text that you're doing that. Retired coaches could do that, and it'll make them feel good. I feel like part of the team, and I'm made part of that team.
Up. I mean, one of the reasons that John started this in honor of Coach Faye Odell was him going around and doing that.
Yes, sir.
And we should probably take some of these lunches and challenge some of these men and women to go around and do that back on the campuses, because that's a great way. I mean, number one, they have a wealth of leadership and value.
Right.
And I think one of the reasons John did this is they feel like they're losing that value. They go plug themselves into a place like this, there's going to be a change for both them and for the campus.
No doubt about it, Todd. That's what it's about.
We've got to figure out how to grow that. That is great.
I'm glad that John and Bill and you guys are trying to do that, because those guys need it for themselves, because that's who they are. That's what they've known. I just listened to your last interview, and what did he do? He started coaching, because that's who he is, you know?
And coaching was like 20 some odd years.
Yes.
And he was about to call, this is what we do. This is how we do it.
Well, and every coach out there is that same way. You know, because it's not the wins and losses. It's not all the other things. It's that you were called by God to be a coach. And you haven't lost that calling on your life. You may not have a team right now. You may not have that opportunity, but look for one. You know, find one through meeting a coach at church or just showing up. And you know, that's one of the things I would just say. I'd say, just show up. You know, just show up. And somebody's going to ask, why are you here? Well, I'm here just praying for you. You know, and there are ways. There's just too much wisdom for these guys that have retired to just put it in a box and fold it and say that it's over.
I couldn't agree with you more. And most of them, especially that generation, I think, of coaches that we're seeing kind of start pull together within these lunches, is they had a purpose.
Yes.
Most of them knew they were going to coach before they were done playing.
Right.
I mean, there was no illusion of playing their pro sport. It was, no, I'm headed into coaching. And then I can understand 40, 50 years later, and now it's like, okay, now what do I do? But to go spend 2 days, or I don't know, at least a day a week at practice and just breathe into a campus, man, I'm blown away. I'm glad you shared that.
Well, that's what it's about. And you know, growing up as a kid, our dad was a coach. That was the highest thing could be. He got into administration. We thought he got a demotion, you know, because the greatest thing was to be able to walk to the field, and they just usher you right on in and go, yeah, you're in. And coaches, you know, it's not just their family that they impact, but they are obviously the father figure to so many young guys, even some who have good fathers. They still have that role. Our players call me Uncle Rex, and I tell them, hey, we're family, and we'll be family for the rest of your life. And so I encourage, you know, you guys to encourage these guys who are on their second round.
I love it.
On the lap, to look for a place to use their platform of influence for good.
Man, that's so good. I really appreciate you sharing that, Rex. What made you leave pastoring to kind of go down this? Was it just Bill asking? Were you?
No, I had. I run a nonprofit that helps at-risk kids stay in school. And so I was moving the headquarters from Shreveport to Tulsa. Bill had not gotten the job at that time. As he got the job, the Lord kind of impressed
Open.
me. This might be a good place to go. And he called me one day and said, hey, why don't you pray about coming and being our chaplain or whatever?
Okay.
And I said, well, I really don't have to pray about it. I was waiting for you to pray about it. And so I know this is where the Lord wants me to be.
Wow.
And that just, for me, kind of blended the best of both worlds of the ministry and the coaching. Pastoring has a lot of similarities to coaching.
Sure.
You have a game day every week. You have supporters and you have critics every week, and you have to just gear up and go for the next week and try to do better. And so, feeling the opportunity to be around players, to have an opportunity each week to teach coaches who are going to impact many people, to teach the players each week, to speak to them and just challenge them to remember the most important thing in life, to press on towards the goal, things that you would just do through normal coaching or FCA opportunities, but to try to support the overall structure of the entire coaching staff, young guys who haven't maybe had as much training on how to be a godly husband or a dad, as well as a coach, to try to just use some of those things that would come to us. Just like in 2 Timothy, where Paul, in his last letter, is writing back to Timothy, almost like the retiring coach back to the young coach, going, hey, here are the things that are important in life. And to grab that as a young coach and to mature and to be able to impact other young coaches as you put a staff together or join a staff about what's the most important thing in life. And it's not the preaching of it, it's the living of it.
It's seeing it.
And that people see.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that coaches have opportunities to do is that the players see and the other coaches see how they interact with their wife, how they interact with their children, and for these retired coaches, how they interact with their grandchildren. Man, why not bring one of them and stand on the sidelines together and just bond while you're reaching out to other guys?
Oh man, my mind is spinning with ideas. I love it. I love it. So see, and you were worried why we would want you to come here, and good Lord brought you here so you could share all this with us. Let's talk about some behaviors that we see out of young coaches, and I want to just pull some wisdom from you. Is one of the things that I see young coaches is an energy that's just sometimes just not directed in a positive manner, right? It's energy and it's kind of everywhere. I don't know. I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to say that. What's one of the things that you do when you see that? What are some of the things with your wisdom and experience? Because that's, as I get older, I'm now an old guy, I'm 47, and I realize when I go to these new staffs, I'm the veteran.
Yeah, right.
And I see these young coaches, and I see that. So I would love to learn from you of kind of what you do and how you pull them in and love on them and help them through that.
Well, I don't correct on the field, obviously on that. But what I try to do in our teaching times, and whether it's an individual or more likely in the group times, I try to use the language that I hear the coaches use. Now, I'm not talking about bad language. I'm talking about the key words. Like Bill's key word is play hard, smart, and tough.
Okay.
And the team that does that is going to win.
Okay.
And so I'll use that in terms of how God coaches us. The number one playbook is not your offense or defensive book. It's the Bible. It's the source of wisdom. So it's our number one playbook. It's God's textbook to us. Just like we tell the players, okay, you got to learn the playbook. Okay, you can't come out here and coach without knowing what the playbook for coaches is. And so you I try to use their language and their phrases that I hear them say. If it's eyes up or whatever. That if it's stay focused or just do your position. You try to take those things and use them in the little short Bible study to say, okay, here's how God would speak to us in wisdom. Now, how does he do us? Well, he teaches us, and teaches us what to do and teaches us what not to do.
Right.
He corrects us when we did what we weren't supposed to do. Right. And then he trains us so that we are equipped for what's ahead. Okay. And so those kind of things of saying, okay, this week, maybe there were some things that needed to be corrected that
Okay.
you were done wrong. How does God do that? Well, he brings us illustrations out of the Bible of players, whether it's Joseph or David or Job, and you use those things, but also to say that to these coaches,
Okay.
this is how I try to do it, is that how do you want your players to react? Okay, how does God want you to react to him? Okay, God doesn't just jump all over you. Now,
Right.
hey, there's a place to be intense as a coach.
Understand.
I'm not trying to under
She just got mad.
do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But to control yourself. I mean, you're yelling at the guy because he didn't control himself
Yeah.
with his attitude. Okay, there might be a better way to do that. And so I try to find those moments that are teachable to coaches of what I see on the field without saying, "Hey, you messed up."
Right.
I try to find those things that we would do with a player. Hey, here's what you did good. This is what's good. Now, how can we do that better? And it's coaching is like football players or basketball, any coaching,
Right.
and it's about the same as in our Christian life. It's about alignment and assignment.
Okay.
Alignment, side by side with God. That's where you start.
Okay.
It doesn't matter what if you're doing your assignment and you don't line up right,
Yeah.
you've messed up everything. And so what we try to do is go, okay, here's our alignment. Our alignment is side by side with God. And what's our assignment? To love first and love most. How do we do that? How do I do that as a coach? How do I do that better with the guy who's struggling because he doesn't think you're treating him fairly, or the guy who gets injured and his whole, like what happened to you? All of a sudden, all of his dreams are crushed. How do you love that guy first and most? And the only way, I go back to imitating how God loves us, walking in love as Christ loved us. You've got to go back and go, how does God love me? It's unfailing. It's unfailing. It's forgiving. Forgiveness, and this is for all coaches, because whether you're fired or not promoted when you
Right.
should have been, or you were somebody criticized you,
Okay.
what happens is that God loves us in a way that forgiveness is the biggest, most important, and usually the missing piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
And I've got to go back and forgive that person. Can't do it. That's why I need God inside of me to do it.
Yeah.
Jesus lives inside of us to lead us to others. He intends to love through us.
Right.
And so when I get a position group as a coach, those are guys God intends for me to love. And that's why he put them together. That's why at this time in my life, I'm on this coaching staff and around these players. These are the guys that God has brought in for a particular purpose, that we might show them the love of Christ.
Yeah.
So,
I've got, I have some simple PE analogies sometimes that I apply to the Bible, so please forgive me, okay? You know way more about the Bible than I do. But one of the things that I've always thought that was interesting is, I think what I love about football and sports is kind of that gladiator part of it. But the world sees our, Jesus in its frailty when he died, and they portray him that way. But I kind of feel like that the Jesus that I served before he went through that process was the big dude on campus that was strong.
Yeah, he's the GOAT.
And he was right, and the ultimate competitor, right? Because anybody else is quitting that journey.
Right.
And so I think those are some of my favorite illustrations of the Bible and in a sport like football is, man, we serve an active and living God, right? And I think these kids can see aggression, but it's not aggression in the wrong way.
right.
Right? It's an aggression for life.
That's right.
I mean, I think God wired at least me to be passionate and to be aggressive towards goals. Right?
Run and win the race.
That's right. And there was
Scripture.
only one that completed this thing correctly.
That's right. That's
so, I love what you're doing. If you were to think about, we're trying to take two components here.
Right.
A group of retired men and bring value, and I think you shared with that. And I've kind of touched on, I want to impact these young coaches and head them in the right direction. Do you have any other pearls of wisdoms that you would share with that group?
Well, it's foundational in my life and in our family. And what I see my brother and other coaches emphasize, okay? You always do your best. You never quit, never. And then you seize the opportunity that's given you. Some of those things are out of your control. Referees call. My dad, who's a Hall of Fame coach, I always say that one of his biggest surprises in heaven was that some of these referees made it there too. And so, but how the ball bounces, the weather, some of these things we have no control over, but we do have control over our attitude and our effort. And the same thing's true spiritually, that we have control over our attitude and our effort. And we can always do our best. We never quit. And we seize our opportunity. Because why? That's who we follow. Someone who did that. You mentioned the cross. The cross, man, it looked like he lost, but it took everything. The greatest strength that there ever has been, the greatest passion that there's ever been to go and finish that.
100%.
And what was said? It's finished. The victory's won. And so here he says, come follow me. And what does he say? You're not going to win every game. You're not going to win every game. You're not going to, every job's not going to be a promotion or higher salary, but you committed to being a coach. So coach. And I always try to share with the coaches as well as the players, God always knows where we are, where we need to be, how and when to get us there. So just be faithful and happy where you are now.
That's good.
Coaches have this idea of, man, if I was here, if I was doing this, whatever. You got to live in the present. And you got to know that, hey, God knows where I need to be. I need to be right here, right now. And if I'm here, I need to be fully here. And if God moves me or opportunities develop for something else, great. But do what I'm supposed to do. And one of the things that greatly impacted me was a story of a missionary, John Payton, and he went to the New Hebrides Islands, and they were all cannibals. They'd never heard the gospel. And he and his wife were given off on a little lifeboat and came ashore, made a life there, had a baby, and she gets sick and she dies. And in another couple of weeks, the child dies. And but as she's dying, Payton says to her, I'm so sorry I brought you here. I'm so sorry that all this happened. And she said this, John, if I had it to do all over again, I would do it again, only with more joy. Wow. And I try to do that in my life and encourage coaches that, hey, it's a tough season, it's a tough job, it's a tough time, but if you had to do it over again, you'd do it. But do it with more joy. So why not now? Try to seize the joy and go, God, there's a reason in all this. Suffering brings endurance and perseverance and hope in our lives. And so enjoy the journey that God has for us.
Got another question for you, because I know your faith and I know Bill's. Have you ever seen God in action on a staff through loss or tragedy, and what did that look like when maybe a player or athlete or coach was just going through something worldly, eventful, right? Tragedy. What does that rally look like, and what have you seen firsthand, and do you have any story you'd be willing to share with us about that?
Well, let me share two things, if it's okay, and you all edit however you want.
We'll let God figure it out.
I've been with the coaching staff where there's been death in families prematurely, young wife and kid. To see what bonding really is of loving a brother through all that. Grief has a process and is part of love, and none of us want to go through that, but we need to be prepared for it, and we certainly need to be a brother who is kind and tenderhearted and compassionate with that. And I've seen that, and that's one of the reasons as coaches we need to bond together. We're not competing against each other. For this season, this time, we're on the same team, and all of us are there to make it better. And the goal is to get all of us to the finish line at the end. And so, it's going to take times that you go and pick somebody else up and try to help them. If I may, I want to take just a little bit of time to tell the story that most impacted my life.
Let's do it.
I call it the highlight of my sports career because it explains what you were asking. It happened when I was 12 years old, so it kind of tells you what kind of career I had.
Okay.
It peaked at 12, but I was playing Little League in Stillwater. We were visiting there for the summer. My dad was going to school there, and they put me on a team, and I played second base on a team, and it was the last game of the season in order to win. It was a championship game to try to go to the Little League World Series, and it was the last inning of the last game, and everybody, my dad's who taught me how to play, and like a dad, how to field the ball and use two hands, how to throw, how to hit. And so everyone knew, who my dad was. And so it was the last inning of the last game, and we were up 1 run. And the Little League rules, pitcher can't pitch anymore after so many innings. And our second best pitcher was down with the mumps. He was sick and out. And our third best had gone on vacation. And why a family would do that when you're playing for the championship, I don't know. I've never forgiven them for that. But the coach comes out, and he calls our first baseman in, Mark, who was a tall, lanky kid. And he threw 8 pitches, walked 2 batters, so the tying winning runs were on. The coach came back out and called me in to pitch. I didn't ever pitch. I pitched batting practice, and why do you pitch batting practice? Because everybody can hit it, And so he brought me in, and I was nervous as everything. And my first pitch was kind of slow, but it was right over the plate, and right over the catcher's head, and right over the umpire's head, and went all the way back to the backstop. And so now the tying runs at third, the winning runs at second, and coaches are putting the bats up and getting ready to leave. And the next guy, I don't know why he swung at the pitches. I hope he's not going to listen on this and be a former coach, but he struck out. The next guy, first pitch, popped it up to me. We're 2 outs, 1 out away from winning the championship to get us to the Little League World Series. And I was going to be the star relief pitcher. And the next pitch, a little short pop-up towards first base, and Mark was frozen, just stood there. I ran over there to get it. It was kind of an easy play. As I got it, the new second baseman came charging in and hit me. The ball had actually already dropped out of my glove, but it hit me, and we tumbled, and the ball rode through the ground, the dirt, and the dust. And I looked up, and the tying run scored. Here comes the winning run around third base. And I still remember it today, from long years past 12, and I crawled through that dust and picked up the ball to throw it. And when I did, it went out the back of my hand, and we lost the game. And everybody knows what happens, whether it's Little League or Sooner softball. The winning team's cheering and the other team's crying, and I was one of the ones crying, and we went to the dugout. I'm making this shorter, but we went to the dugout. I was heartbroken. Didn't want to see my dad and hear how disappointed he was in it, or even see it in his eyes, and had the cap pulled down over my head and eyes, and crying. And the coach gave us some kind of talk about better next year, but I wasn't going to be back there next year, and I was the last guy out, and the coach literally picked me up and started walking me towards the parking lot, and they turned off the stadium lights, and it was dark, and I for a minute thought, I'm going to run away, not sure where I would run to, but I just can't stand to see my dad's disappointment. And I was standing on the edge of the gravel parking lot, and I raised my eyes just enough to kind of see the distance, and I saw my dad's feet standing beside the car. And I looked up, and what I saw changed my life. My dad was standing there like this. A little 12-year-old boy went running into his dad's arms, and he just put those big old arms around me. And then after a while, I said, "Dad, I'm so sorry." And Dad said, "That's okay, son. Let's go home." And I realized right then that I had a dad as well as a Heavenly Father who would love me no matter what, who would never love me less, and that no matter whatever happened, we could always go home.
Wow.
And that impacted my life as much as anything that any coach or anybody has ever done, of going, hey, that's what these guys, whether they're a player or whether it's a coach, win or lose, arm around them, hug them, I still love you, let's go home.
Wow.
And coaches make that difference in guys' lives.
Thank you so much for sharing it. I couldn't agree more. I mean, unfortunately there are a lot of men and women that don't have a dad
That's
like
it.
that.
That's
and
it.
So the coach gets to stand in that opportunity, hopefully with that same illustration
Yes.
of those situations for sure.
And coaches to be reminded that those things are just as important and just as impactful as teaching them how to play defensive end or quarterback or whatever, of going, these are the moments that they remember. And coaches are in a very unique position to be able to do that. And so I want to encourage them to do it, and thank you guys for being a part of it, man.
No, that's fantastic. I'll leave this to you. Is there anything else you'd like to share while you're here that you feel like God's put on your heart?
John Odell owes me.
He owes you?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, he owes both of us.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it.
Okay.